there have been a couple interesting themes that have sort of come out in a lot of other people's presentations. Obviously, aspects of rapidly urbanizing or re-urbanizing or just cities growing in general with lots of cranes. And then also just sort of the people aspects. So I'm hoping to touch on both those things as part of my presentation, luckily. And this project basically, we're building large public sanitary sewer on private easements, which is what this project is, which is sort of the real challenge and crux of this. So real quick, talk about myself. I've been at Charlotte Water for about 14 years now. Originally started off working inside treatment plants, so away from the public. It was nice and straightforward. And then did a good job at that, and my bosses decided to put me outside in the public. And so now I do pipeline projects where I get to interact with people a lot more. I've always interacted with people, but now I get to interact with new people every single day, every single week, depending on where we are in our pipeline project. And I've done lots of hard projects and done all kinds of projects. So just a real quick overview of what I have done. I implemented our combined heat and power facility, renewable energy facility. We produce a megawatt of energy around the clock. Pretty hard because partway through the project, my budget was removed. Had to figure out a way to come up with money to sort of implement and build something that I thought was really cool. Ended up learning about our SRF program in North Carolina, sort of mastered that program to build our CHP facility, and then went on to sort of manage another $100 million in loans, low interest, to save our utility money to build interesting projects. And then my bosses said, hey, you're doing really good inside treatment plant. Let's give you some pipeline projects. So this was sort of right before COVID happened. Charlotte, like Nashville, is growing. COVID sort of slowed it down a little bit, but not really. Tremendous amount of people moving to Charlotte every day. So we started building for that growth. So my bosses gave me a sewer line project through an area that was near our light rail. It's going to be rapidly urbanizing. We knew it. And it had 5 tunnels that were part of the project. So 2 of those tunnels under a major roadway we couldn't open cut. And then the other 3 tunnels were under I-77. So, high consequence of failure when you're tunneling under a major interstate. And then simultaneously he said, hey, you got a good team for your sewer project. I'm giving you a water project as well. And he gave me a water transmission main down the middle of South Boulevard, which is one of our busiest streets in Charlotte. Could not close the street anyway, and had to maintain pedestrian usage of all the crosswalks as well. So also challenging, sort of a double whammy there. But I guess I did a good enough job at those projects too, because now he has given me this Little Hope Creek project. Again, it's a big pipe, small spaces, seems to be my forte. There's been lots of turnover on this project, so we're in phase 3 of this project. There's 2 phases before me, and there was 4 PMs before me, and there was at least 1 inspector who came and went. I'm starting to wonder if this project is just so difficult and challenging that people change jobs or move laterally just to get away from it. So I'm the 5th and final PM. I've told my boss that. I was brought in at the end of phase 2. So again, I had someone literally leave and say, hey, here's my mess of problems, deal with this and close out this phase. So not a great start to the project for me, inherited all the problems. Phase 3 design was already done. I didn't get to put any input into phase 3 design, and we already had a contractor on board. So my ability to sort of set a good starting tone also was, about 3 years too late. And then on top of that, of course, I inherited a bunch of angry neighbors from the sins of phase 1 and phase 2, right? So talking more about this project, we're really close to houses. So the development, of course, is happening along major corridors, and the major corridors, of course, are, they're the boundary for these nice residential neighborhoods. And the sewer has to go in the residential neighborhood because they're downhill of the major corridors, but all the development happens on the corridors. So yeah, the people aren't super happy to understand that what we're doing is going to benefit developers that are along the major corridors, but we're going to be in their yard. And literally, we're either in their street in the front of their house, you can see in that picture on the right there, or we're going into their backyards. Just not a lot of space, a lot of big, heavy equipment, not a lot of space. On top of that, Little Hope Creek flows in some nice bedrock in places, and so here's one of our bore pits. We had to bore between these 2 houses as we transitioned from front street to backyard alignments. And for all my geology people out there, this is a nice, really strong diorite. If you're a non-geologist, just a granite material, but super, super strong, hard rock material that was in our way. Tried hoe ram, jackhammer mounted on a backhoe, wasn't able to break it up, had to do some blasting. And so we're literally blasting. I think our nearest seismic sensor was 2 feet from a house and 30 feet from where we're blasting. So extremely challenging areas to be blasting. People aren't excited about that at all, right? Came through a nice cul-de-sac at one point in our alignment. Again, people move to cul-de-sacs to get away from traffic, right? And all of a sudden we were the traffic and we were the construction zone in this cul-de-sac. So not great. Here's another picture, just sort of really in the street right away right there. So you can see the house in the back of the picture there, and we're putting pipe in right in the front yard. We did maintain, and we're continuing to maintain access to all the driveways on a daily basis. You can see clearly this person can't get in and out of the driveway at that moment, but before the end of the day, they were able to get to their house. This is what it looks like out behind the houses. The creek's on the far right there, where the trees still are. That's kind of the creek bank. We did have to clear a bunch of sort of creek floodplain forested area, and people weren't real psyched about that because they love trees and shade was going away. But that's where the sewer has to go, and it's available space, right? So trees had to be cut down, unfortunately. Okay, so now I'm going to launch into sort of my strategies and tactics for what I did and what we've done. So talk a little bit about our procurement method. We delivered this product, Progressive Design Build. Talk a little bit about some professional communication people on board, just personal communication that I've been doing, and then tracking interactions, and then a couple philosophical points about how I manage projects. In my opinion, you do not want a lowest bidder on a project like this, right? So Progressive Design Build allows you to do qualifications-based selection. So we did not pick the cheapest firm out there. And in addition to that, we had the consultant who was doing the design on board. They're still on board. So when we encounter problems, we really get to have them we get to all come to a table and sort of problem solve together in a group. I think it's a great method for a project that's this public with this many angry people involved. In addition, my consultant, I have a field inspector that's there all the time. His boss is also fairly heavily involved, and I've worked with him in the past on that South Boulevard project. And then additionally, I have a communication sub, and then additionally, I have just specifically a blasting and monitoring sub. So a good team, really good team. On a professional note, we sort of pioneered the use, at least in my utility, of a slick text service on the South Boulevard project, so a way to really gather a lot of phone numbers and disseminate a lot of information to the public. And so we're doing that as well. We have about 200 people in the neighborhood that are on this slick text chain. The population in the neighborhood is a little bit older, so social media is not really a viable way to reach everyone, but text messaging does appear to be an effective way to reach a large number of them. We also, of course, do door hangers and mailers, which seem to really work well with this population. And then, we're starting to do a final notice as well. So I ran into this problem with phase 1 and mostly phase 2. There was no sort of closure documentation, or at least opportunity for homeowners to raise their hand and tell us what the problems were. So I was getting calls 60 or 90 days after the project was over to say, hey, by the way, you never fixed this problem. So we have sort of a final notice now. We put on their door and say, hey, it's got my phone number and my name on there, so you got to call me in the next couple of weeks if you have problems. So on a personal level, when I first became involved, I went and met with the neighborhood association. I got to meet the 10 most involved people in the neighborhood and talk about the project. Did a little bit of a blog post, publication in their newsletter, talk about the project. Some people were already familiar with it, but just introduce myself is really helpful. I find myself also doing a lot of text messaging. So I get phone calls from numbers I don't recognize, and I don't answer them. And I auto text back and say, hey, I don't know who this is. I'm busy right now. Let me know who you are. I'll give you a call back. And then I find out who they are, and I coordinate and text with the homeowners a lot. In addition to face-to-face, of course, I do spend a lot of time meeting with homeowners in their yards and in their driveways, just being there and talking to them. I've met a lot of people and learned a lot of personal things about people, and then just lots of interesting and strange conversations. But oftentimes that's just sort of what's necessary as sort of this strange project management on private property kind of thing, right? One of the other reasons why I don't typically answer my phone on the ring is because I don't want to be in my truck driving somewhere and a person's angry at me about something. I don't know who they are, what their address is, and I can't write it down. So for the most part, I try to sort of log all of my interactions with all the neighbors. And it's just a pretty simple spreadsheet. But I mean, you can see here I'm up to 145 or something like that over the past year. It just helps me to sort of keep track of things, make sure people get heard, get some resolution. And then I get to also sort of see, I mean, I can easily filter and see like who's the person who calls me once a month and what's their issue, and make sure I follow up and really try to be extra attentive so they get tired of me following up. That's sort of the goal, right? Not the other way around. I've discovered that an effective strategy for me personally when I am meeting with people is to try to do some teaching, because the average person doesn't know where infrastructure is supposed to go or why it has to go there. They don't know how it works. Earlier, y'all were talking about how stormwater is not really talked about and people don't know what it is. At least you can see that, right? You can't see sewer for the most part, so you can't really see water for the most part. So just teaching them, talking to them about, hey, typically we're along the creek and we go downhill, right? So that's why it's got to be along the creek and go downhill. And they seem to understand that, and they seem to be more receptive. And I mean, yeah, it's easy to sort of have animosity towards a public utility when you don't know what they do and where they do it and why they're doing it, and you don't know who's involved. But once they meet me and I tell them about how things work and how the city has to have this and upsides and downsides of living in a city, right? Then they become more receptive and they become more understanding and they become a little bit more friendly. At least that's been my experience. So I live approximately 3 miles from this project. I drive this loop fairly frequently. I'm not sure if my boss intentionally keeps giving me projects that are so close to my home on purpose. I do appreciate it, and I do enjoy working remotely until I'm not working remotely, until I'm at the project site. But I do make it a point that, if someone calls me with a certain level of agitation in their voice or leaves, and I've had some crazy voicemails, that one of the first things I do is say, okay, are you available tomorrow? Can I come by? Like, are you working from home, or when do you get off work, or can I come by? Like, what's your address? Oh, I'm actually gonna already be over there. Just let me stop by and we can talk more. I think there might be some confusion, right? My PM's calling me right now too. That's great timing. So, I mean, just being present seems to have made a huge difference. And my boss jokes about how, like, we'll be talking about a certain, like, parcel number 402, and I'm like, oh, so-and-so. Like, I know the people, I know their addresses, and I know their names, and I discuss them in the meeting as though they are, actual live human beings. And that seems to make a huge difference when I'm interacting with them, when my contractor's around, and when I talk with them. So I would suggest trying to do that. I don't know if you have direct reports, if anyone in this room has direct reports, you're a supervisor and you get to sort of dole out who works on what projects, but if you can, put project managers who live near their project on those projects, I think it's very helpful, because they can be, person-to-person interaction, I think, is underrated. Other tips, I already mentioned this. My phone rings and I just press a single button that says, hey, I'm busy right now. By the way, I don't know who this is. I'll call you back. And then at that point, I typically get a text message that says, hey, this is so-and-so at this address, and this is my problem. And it gives me a chance to sort of gather myself and log the interaction and try to find out what's going on before I call them back. There's a couple other projects in my area, and I guess because I'm responsive, people call me, and somehow when you Google my name in Charlotte, or you Google like water project Charlotte, my name comes up from the South Boulevard project, so I get a lot of like wrong phone calls. So it's good to sort of not have knee-jerk reactions, to be able to sort of get some information before I call them back. I wear typically bright colors when I'm out in the field, as part of safety, but also just because I want to be visible. I typically wear a bright orange shirt. I've got multiple copies of it, so I wear the same bright orange shirt multiple days of the week. And so I'm pretty visible from the neighbors. They see me, they know me, they recognize me, and they'll come out and talk to me, or I'll say hi to them. So that's been helpful. I can't stress this enough. When you're working in the public, right, you need to pretend like you're always being watched, because you are always being watched. And when I took over for phase 2, neighbors would come up to me and tell me about all the stuff my contractor had done. Literally, like, some of the neighbors had even like written down and like made notes, and then like sent me pictures of the notes that they had made. Like, they're basically like doing construction inspection for me via, through their blinds. So you need to understand that happens. And the more angry the people are, the more you're going to hear about it. The less angry the people are, you may not hear about it, but they're still watching. They are always watching. So I make it a habit to pick up garbage. My contractor's garbage, the neighbor's garbage, whoever's garbage, right? It seems to be, it's a good thing for me to do. It's just a habit I've gotten into, and I'm hoping that it builds some level of goodwill, right? The real crux of it is you got to increase the interactions with people who are angry, right? So, they're going to be really mad the first time you meet them. Second time you meet them, they might still be a little bit mad. The third time you meet them, they're going to be hopefully a little bit, maybe they had a good day. The seventh and eighth time that you meet someone, they're going to see you as a person, you're going to see them as a person, and you can sort of come to some level of collaboration. And it sort of is collaboration, but also, like, they don't have the choice, right? The sewer line has to go where it has to go. So one of my big pet peeves is thanking people for their patience when they don't have a choice. So I never do that. Never thank someone for their patience if they don't have a choice. And then I talk about this too. The goal, right? The goal of this project is that we all walk away moderately dissatisfied. We're not trying to make people happy. No one's going to be happy that you tore up their backyard and they have to replant their Lenten roses, right? I'm not happy that we're in people's backyards cutting down trees, So we're all just trying to make the best of the situation. The city has to exist because it's a city. And it's not going to stop being a city because someone doesn't want a sewer in their backyard. So the goal is to be moderately dissatisfied and walk away, right? These are just some of the sort of frequently, again, I get this a lot. The neighbors all talk to each other, so that's one of the things that happens quite frequently is that a neighbor will call me angry because their neighbor told them such and such. And again, like, I go meet with them. You never want to say, hey, your neighbor's wrong, they're crazy. But going to talk to them and say, hey, this is what I understood the neighbor told you, and then they typically will backtrack a little bit, and I could say, oh, okay, well, like, here's what I think's really going on, and here's what's really actually going to happen. And again, they tell me, oh, well, my dog just died, and I'm having a rough week. I do a little therapy in the driveway, and then we kind of come to a consensus there. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of, objection, hearsay, not admissible to court. Whatever you've been told is probably wrong, but here's the reality situation, and here's what we're going to do, and we're all going to try and leave moderately dissatisfied, right? The big one, of course, is I'm the new PM, right? I'm here. I'm the new PM. You have my phone number now. You know what I look like. I will be with you till the end. So don't call anyone else. Don't listen to anyone else. Call me, text me, talk to me. I will come see you. I think that's, for the most part, it. I would take questions. I think I only have 2 minutes, so we'll have to just talk in the foyer. Thank you.